So if you remember a few months back, I gave a video talking about a beta wireless service called FreedomPop, and it dealt with the little mobile hotspot that I got from them that provided 500 megabytes of data a month for free. And I mentioned in that video the possibility that they will have a FreedomPop phone service that gives you a certain amount of minutes messaging and data for free per month. Well, this is it. And this is actually one of their newer phones that they've been able to put on the service now. It's the Samsung Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch that they've been able to put on their service, and this is the box that it comes in. There's their little slogan, "Join the revolution and free your phone." And of course, as you see, FreedomPop is on the top there. Again, this is already unboxed. All that's in here is some instructions and the micro USB charging adapter that they give you. So, here's the actual phone here itself. Again, the Samsung Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch, and of course, FreedomPop works over Sprint, so it's got the Sprint logo on the back of it. Now, again, it's got a dual core processor, a gigabyte of memory, I think 16 gigabytes. Onboard storage, it might be 8, but it does have a micro SD card slot on the back, and you can actually get into the cover once I find the nick to pull it. There you go. Back plastic cover comes right off. And there's our Samsung battery and our micro SD card slot. I put a 2 gigabyte micro SD card in there, kind of just as a backup for all the applications from my other Android devices. And we have our 8 megapixel camera with flash on the back. And of course, there's no SIM card in here. I use it on these devices. And just put our plastic cover back on. Just snaps all around. Like so. And also on the bottom is where we find our speaker grill, our micro USB charging port. On this side we have our up and down volume rocker, and on the other side is where we have our power button. On the top we have our 3.5mm headphone jack. One of our voice canceling microphones is there. The other is kind of toward the bottom, right here on the back side. We have a 4.5-inch screen. It's not HD quality, but it will kind of do for most applications. And you have your front-facing webcam. Here's your earpiece speaker. And then we have our menu buttons down here. Our home is right there. The back, our search, which makes use of Google Now because this has Android 4.1, I think, on it, so it's got at least ice cream sandwich or the next version up from that, and our application button. So let's power up the phone. Put it on here. And you saw the little notification LED right here flash. Samsung Galaxy S2. And there's our FreedomPop startup animation. Now the specifics about the free service you get on the phone with FreedomPop is you get 200 minutes, 500 messages, and 500 megabytes of data, all free every month. Now if you want more minutes or you want to have more messages or more data, of course you're going to have to pay for it because, as I mentioned in the previous video when I was talking about the mobile hotspot, FreedomPop is a freemium service, meaning it provides the free options, but it tries to encourage still getting some kind of revenue by giving you premium options. Like, for instance, on here, the free service doesn't have voicemail. You have to pay like $2 or $3 a month if you want to have a voicemail service on your phone. And again, if you want more minutes or more data, of course you got to pay for a package that gives you more. But I think for most people, if you're not going to be a data hungry person and just really need the voice and text messaging, it'll probably do for you now. Again, Sprint has coverage in in certain areas it's not as widespread as the other carriers like AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile. So again, your overall service coverage may be limited. Now this is running on Wi-Fi right now. It supports 3G and 4G. Let's look at my FreedomPop. That'll let you see my status. And there it is. There is my account. You can see how many days I have left in my cycle. Again, I've got the 200 minutes to 500 messages. And I have 550 megabytes of data because I got an additional 50 megabytes because this account that I have for this is linked with my mobile hotspot. And so when you do that, both this account and my mobile hotspot both got an additional 50 megabytes of monthly capacity on their data plan. That's part of what also FreedomPop does, is you can share and receive data with other people that you know that use FreedomPop. And if you become friends with them, you automatically get 50 megabytes of data added to your account every month. So it's pretty handy. And again, with the FreedomPop application, I can go in and change services. Like for instance, you can see I can go to their premium 4 gigabyte or 2 gigabyte plans if I need additional data, which of course is going to cost you monthly instead of the free service. I can see how much I've used or gained so far. And of course I can configure a couple of other things. So let's perform some functions. Well, for instance, let me turn off the Wi-Fi. And because this is Samsung, it's got their TouchWiz UI interface over top Android. So you've kind of got all their little quick shortcuts that you can access here for controlling phone functions when you bring down the menu. You've also got their blocking mode, which I've turned on. So at nighttime, it'll just turn off some of the phone stuff so it's not, ringing or vibrating or showing the LED or anything. So turn off the Wi-Fi. Then it'll automatically try to connect it to the cellular network. So I've got my HTC One S on T-Mobile over here with it, and we're going to have this phone called that phone. Come on here. And of course, it's already got a whole bunch of numbers on here, so I'm just going to hit that. And I'll hit my call button. That's going to initiate a call through the cell network to this phone. There you go. Of course, I'm going to decline. I'm going to hang up. Now I'm going to have this phone call that phone. I'll basically call it back. Okay. Let's get a ring that phone. So that shows the two-way calling. Of course, then I have to drag it to end. Okay. Now, since this is on the cellular network, let's look at a speed test. Put this out to the side for a moment. Okay, zoom in on our phone. Okay, connected. Let's begin our test. I want to look at our settings. I like to use kilobytes per second instead of megabytes per second. That's just the general way that I like to do a speed test. So let's do it here. Now, right now, it says it's operating on the 3G network. It wasn't able to get a 4G signal out here. Again, it's out here where I am. Mostly the 3G signal from Sprint gets out here. Sometimes the 4G signal can, but it's really weak. Yeah, that's about average for a 3G signal. About 60 kilobytes a second. On the upload side, about 40 on the download side. So again, for a 3G connection, that's okay. 4G would be a lot faster. It'd be probably a few hundred kilobytes per second. So that's not too bad for this phone. So we're going to look at the text messaging here on the phone. And I should mention, before I was having issues with text messaging with FreedomPop. I was able to send messages, but I could not receive any. I brought this issue up to them along with several other people that were having the same problem, and it looks to have been resolved now. I just discovered it today that it had been fixed. So, I got my 1S and of course the Galaxy S2 here. And I'll send a text message over to it, and I've reconnected this phone back onto Wi-Fi. So it's going to send it over Wi-Fi. Takes a little bit to get there. And there it is. Just shows up the word test. That's what I sent. Okay. I sent him a whole bunch of gobbledygook. Okay. So sending text messages, of course, works fine, and that was the only thing I had working before, but it seems they've now got the issue of being able to receive text messages resolved now. See, now I've got that from this phone. Test. And there you go. So that's the text messaging capabilities of the phone. It's out of the way. Two things that people encounter with FreedomPop and the Samsung Galaxy S2. The number one thing is many complain about the battery life on this. It's very short. And in fact, you can see it's down to 91% from a full charge already. And the reason is FreedomPop's service is VoIP based. It's voice over IP internet protocol. And that means all your voice calls and your text messages are routed through the data network when you're using it. Now the common question is it going to use up the data that you're allotted, the 500 megabytes? And the answer is no. The voice and text messages are counted separately from the data that you use for things like email, YouTube, browsing the web, and whatnot. So that's the two things. Now, addressing the battery issue, again, there's not much you can do because it's constantly having to use the data network for everything, and that drains a lot of power. But in a separate video, I'll have a potential solution for this to at least increase your battery life on the phone. So I'll show that in a separate video. So again, this is the Samsung Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch on FreedomPop.